Right and wrong, a Mystrikal perspective. Mystrikism defines right and wrong in terms of well-being across three interlocking domains: sapient beings, sentient life, and nature's ecosystems. An action is right when, given the moral aims we have openly chosen as mystriks, for example, to minimize unnecessary suffering and maximize flourishing, it reliably increases flourishing or reduces suffering within and across these domains. The action is wrong when it predictably undermines them. This tri-domain scope is deliberate. Mystrikism treats each domain as ethically significant and measurable, and it anchors assessment in evidence-based actionable indicators rather than vague sentiments. That opening definition is not floating in philosophical air. It follows from Mystrikism's meta-ethical stance. Mystriks are subjectively grounded, yet methodologically objective ethical naturalists and moral rationalists. By our declared aims, we mean the moral goals we have consciously committed to as mystriks, especially the desire to reduce unnecessary suffering and increase flourishing for sapient beings, sentient life, and nature's ecosystems. We openly choose our moral aims, but once those aims are stated, the real world constrains what will and will not work. Facts about consequences, revealed by the methods of science and disciplined reasoning, inform us about which actions align with our aims. In this sense, our moral conclusions are conditionally pragmatic. Once our aims are declared, evidence and disciplined reasoning decide which actions best satisfy them. Mystrikism explicitly rejects metaphysical, mind-independent moral facts. Objectivity lives in the method and in the facts about outcomes. Because Mystrikism is naturalistic, it treats morality as a reality-facing enterprise rather than an appeal to invisible edicts. When mystriks use the word objective, they mean it relative to clearly stated goals using evidence and logic, not cosmic rules outside of minds. That is why the framework is best described as ethical naturalism or naturalistic constructivism rather than classic moral realism. We do not discover moral tablets in the fabric of the universe. We subjectively affirm aims and then investigate with the same seriousness we would bring to any other domain of inquiry. From this vantage point, right and wrong are determined by examining the impacts within each domain and at the points of interaction between them. For sapient beings, humans and other potential advanced intelligences, flourishing includes durable health, psychological resilience, social trust, fair legal systems, and genuine autonomy. For sentient life, it provides for the reduction of suffering and the provision of species-appropriate, thriving conditions. For ecosystems, it includes biodiversity, resilience, and the existential stability that makes life possible in the first place. These are not poetic gestures. Mystrikism treats them as measurable and actionable targets that guide policy, practice, and personal conduct. The why behind these definitions is straightforward and honest. First, Mystrikism reveals the truth about where values originate. They emerge from reflective minds that prioritize well-being, justice, honesty, and rational thought rather than from metaphysical mandates, universal truths, or cosmic commands. Second, once values are decided, the integrated principles of science take the lead. Moral knowledge is treated like other knowledge: hypothesize, test, measure, adjust. If a practice measurably reduces trauma, increases trust, and improves long-term outcomes for sapient beings without imposing disproportionate harms on sentient life or ecosystems, mystriks provisionally judge it right. If it produces sustained unnecessary harm, it is considered wrongful, not because the universe cares, but because the evidence shows it contradicts our goals. This is justice naturalized, disciplined, method-based assessment of whether actions, systems, or norms support or undermine declared ends. This stance also clarifies how mystriks think about evidence. Moral questions invite the same rigor as any serious investigation of nature. We ask, what does the best available research say about the effects of this action on living systems? Here, psychology, public health, economics, ecology, and law are not tangents. They are the instrumentation of moral inquiry findings that compassionate policies improve health outcomes, resilience, and social cohesion are not just academic. They are decision relevant because they show what actually works to realize our stated aims across the three domains. Objectivity, in this framework, resides in the empirical method and evidence-based adjustment of strategies, not in supposed eternal facts. A Mystrikal account of right and wrong also integrates intention and context, but refuses to stop at good intentions. Intention matters because it helps us interpret responsibility and guide our responses, yet the ultimate court is consequence. This is why Mystrikism pairs scientific honesty with justice as co-foundational virtues. We tell the truth about causes and effects, even when it is inconvenient, and we hold practices accountable for their actual impact on the world. Sometimes this means rowing against cultural currents. Sometimes it means revising our own habits when the data rebukes them. Either way, honesty and justice are the twin lights steering toward appreciable flourishing. Compassion is essential in this picture, but it is not left to drift as mere sentiment. Mystriks warn that if kindness depends only on how we happen to feel, it can become unreasonable and limited. Mystrikism gives feeling its due, then binds it firmly to reason. That is the logic behind what we call principled disgust, a reason-governed, ethically grounded aversion to deliberate cruelty, malignant deception, reckless exploitation, and sustained injustice. It is not a license for rage. It is a commitment to proportionate, evidence-based opposition when harm is intentional or persistent. Without such boundaries, compassion becomes naive. With them, compassion retains its integrity. The ethical payoff is clarity. When a practice demonstrably reduces suffering for sentient life and strengthens ecosystem stability, while respecting the autonomy and well-being of sapient beings, the Mystrikal verdict is that the practice is right given our goals. When a system systematically produces avoidable harm, child exploitation, degradation of habitats essential to life, institutions that erode trust and health, the verdict is that it is wrong, and principled opposition becomes a duty. The method demands proportionality and adaptation. As conditions and evidence change, so should our stance, always with an eye on the tri-domain ledger of costs and benefits. Seen from a distance, this is an ethic of transparent means and measurable ends. It begins by declaring values without pretense. It continues by submitting proposals to reality's audit. It matures by revising course when the evidence instructs us to. Mystrikism even makes room for awe-ism, but keeps it squarely naturalized. Wonder at reality is welcomed as a wellspring of motivation and meaning, not as a loophole for superstition. In that spirit, right in Mystrikism means what demonstrably works to realize flourishing across sapient beings, sentient life, and ecosystems, and wrong means what demonstrably thwarts it. The process is not infallible, but it is honest, corrigible, and public, which is precisely what you want when the stakes are life, suffering, and the only world we have.